The aircraft door opened. Below was emptiness. 3,000 meters altitude. Wind slammed into her face. The instructor shouted, "Ready?" The woman nodded. But she wasn't ready. She was terrified. First jump. Civilian parachute school. Nobody knew. She'd come here after the military unit rejected her. Secretly. With her own money. By her own choice. Because Commander Vega had said women can't jump. And she wanted to prove it. But now, at the door's edge, looking at the void, maybe he was right, she thought. Maybe she couldn't handle it. Maybe, jump. The instructor pushed. She fell. Into emptiness. She screamed. Fear. Panic. Then, the parachute opened. She swung. Glided through the air. And in that moment, she knew. She could do it. Once more. 100 times more. 200 times more. Until she could return to that door and say, "I jumped." 200 times. Will you accept me into the unit now? Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Veteran Stories so you never miss these extraordinary tales of courage under fire. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Her name was Captain Raina Castellanos, though when she'd first walked into Commander Vega's office at Fort Bragg 6 months ago, her rank hadn't mattered. What mattered was her gender. She was 28 years old. Army intelligence officer. 5 years of service. Fluent in 3 languages. Expert marksman. Perfect service record. And she wanted to join the 27th Special Operations Parachute Unit. The most elite airborne unit in the U.S. military. The unit that conducted high-altitude insertions behind enemy lines. The unit that had never, in its 40-year history, accepted a female candidate. Commander Luis Vega had looked at her application like it was a joke. Literally laughed. His staff officers, all male, had joined in. Women can't jump, one had said. The physics don't work, another added. Body mass. Upper body strength. Bone density. It's not discrimination, it's biology. Vega had crumpled her application without reading past the first page. This unit isn't a diversity initiative, he'd said. It's a combat unit. Lives depend on split-second decisions and physical capability. A woman's body can't handle the G-forces. Can't carry the equipment load. Can't perform under the conditions we operate in. I'm not risking my men's lives to make a political statement. Raina had tried to argue. Had cited her qualifications. Her fitness scores. Her willingness to meet any standard they set. Vega had cut her off. Have you ever jumped out of an aircraft? He'd asked. She'd admitted she hadn't. Then you don't know what you're asking for. Come back when you've actually experienced it. Then we'll talk. But his tone made clear there would be no talk. The door was closed. She'd left that office humiliated. Angry. But also determined. If jumping was the barrier, she'd jump. Not through military channels, which were closed to her. Through civilian channels. Where nobody cared about her gender. Only about her money and her willingness to risk her life. She'd found a civilian skydiving school 2 hours from base. Desert Sky Jump Center. Run by a former Air Force pararescue jumper named Carl Brecht. She'd shown up on a Saturday morning, paid the tandem jump fee, and signed the waiver. Brecht had looked at her military ID. Your active duty, he'd asked. She'd nodded. Why aren't you jumping through military? She'd told him. Brecht had shaken his head. Vega's an ass. But he's not entirely wrong. Parachuting isn't easy. Especially the kind they do. Halo. Ichigo. Combat conditions. It's dangerous. Can you teach me? She'd asked. Brecht had studied her. Yeah. I can teach you. But it's going to cost. And it's going to hurt. And there's no guarantee you won't die. I understand, she'd said. When do we start? That first jump, tandem with Brecht, had been the most terrifying moment of her life. Standing at the aircraft door at 10,000 feet. Looking down at nothing. Feeling the wind. Knowing that in seconds she'd be falling at terminal velocity. Her body had screamed to step back. Her brain had calculated all the ways this could kill her. But Brecht had counted down. 3. 2. 1. Jump. And she'd jumped. Or rather, he'd pushed, and she'd fallen. The scream that tore from her throat wasn't conscious. It was pure primal terror. But then the parachute deployed. The harness caught her. The fall became a glide. And suddenly she was floating. Silent. Peaceful. Looking at the desert spreading below her. In that moment, terror transformed into something else. Wonder. And beneath the wonder, determination. If she could do this once, she could do it again. And again. Until it became second nature. But here's what nobody tells you about learning to parachute. The fear doesn't go away. It just becomes familiar. Raina's second jump, her first solo, was worse than the first. Because now she knew what was coming. Knew the moment of stepping into nothing. Knew the seconds of freefall before the chute deployed. Knew all the things that could go wrong. Chute malfunction. Line twist. Hard landing. And without Brecht strapped to her back, she was alone with those fears. She almost backed out. Almost told the instructor she'd changed her mind. But then she thought about Vega's laugh. About his certainty that women couldn't do this. And she stepped out of the aircraft. Fell. Screamed again. Deployed her chute. Landed hard enough to bruise her hip. And immediately signed up for another jump. The pattern repeated. Jump 3. Jump 5. Jump 10. Each one terrifying. Each one teaching her something. How to control her body in freefall. How to navigate with the toggles. How to land without injury. How to pack her own chute. How to read wind conditions. How to handle equipment malfunctions. By jump 20, she was competent. By jump 50, she was confident. By jump 100, she was considering advanced training. Halo, high altitude low opening. The technique special operations used. Jumping from 25,000 feet. Free fall for most of it. Deploy low to avoid radar detection. It was dangerous. It was expensive. And it was exactly what Vega's unit required. Brecht had warned her. Halo isn't recreational jumping. It's tactical. The altitude means oxygen deprivation. The free fall is longer. The margin for error is smaller. People die doing this. But he'd also seen her determination. Seen that she wasn't going to stop until she'd proven whatever she needed to prove. So he'd certified her for high-altitude training. Taught her oxygen systems. Taught her cold weather gear. Taught her how to stay conscious at altitudes that would black out untrained jumpers. The training was brutal. The jumps were terrifying in new ways. But Raina kept going. Jump 120. Jump 140. Jump 160. Each one adding to her skills. Each one adding to her logbook. Each one bringing her closer to the moment she could walk back into Vega's office with proof. Let's pause here. Because what Raina was doing was extraordinary in ways most people wouldn't understand. She was spending her own money, thousands of dollars, on training the military wouldn't provide. She was using her leave time and weekends. Driving hours to the jump center. Risking her life repeatedly. All to prove a point to a man who'd already decided she wasn't worth his time. Some would call it obsession. Others would call it dedication. Raina called it necessary. Because this wasn't just about joining one unit. It was about breaking a barrier. About proving that women can't was a lie. About opening a door for others who'd come after her. By month 8, she'd completed 180 jumps. More than most special operations candidates had when they entered training. Brecht told her she was ready. Better than ready. She had skills that would put her in the top 10% of military jumpers. But Raina set a goal. 200 jumps. A round number. Undeniable. She completed jump 190 on a windy day that nearly killed her. A wind shear during deployment twisted her lines. She had to cut away her main chute and deploy her reserve at dangerously low altitude. Landed in a desert wash. Bruised ribs. Sprained ankle. Brecht had driven out to get her. "You done?" he'd asked. She'd shaken her head. 10 more. He'd laughed. "You're either the bravest person I know or the craziest." "Can't it be both?" she'd asked. Jump 200 was ceremonial in her mind. Brecht and the other instructors knew what it meant. They'd watched her transform from a terrified first-timer to a skilled parachutist. They'd seen her dedication. Her refusal to quit. On that last jump, Brecht jumped with her. Not tandem. Side by side. They exited at 20,000 feet. Free fell together for 90 seconds. Deployed at 4,000 feet. Landed together in the designated zone. When Raina stood up, Brecht saluted her. A civilian saluting an officer. "You earned this," he said, handing her a certificate. 200 jumps. Halo qualified. Instructor rated. Now go make that asshole eat his words. 1 year after Vega had rejected her, Raina walked back into his office. Unannounced. He looked up from his desk, surprised. Recognition crossed his face. Then annoyance. "Captain. I told you we don't." She dropped her jump logbook on his desk. 200 entries. Dates. Altitudes. Conditions. Signatures from certified instructors. Brecht's certification of her Halo qualification. Vega picked up the logbook. Flipped through it. His expression shifted from annoyance to confusion to something else. Respect? Maybe. Or maybe just recalculation. "You did this in a year?" he asked. She nodded. "Civilian training. My own time. My own money. 200 jumps. 50 of them Halo. I've logged more air time than most of your candidates have when they start your program." Vega studied the logbook. Then her. "This doesn't change the physical requirements. The unit standards are non-negotiable." "I'm not asking you to change them," Raina said. "I'm asking you to let me try to meet them." Vega leaned back. Silent. Calculating. Finally, the next selection cycle starts in 3 weeks. 24 candidates. Historically, for make it through. The training is 12 weeks. Physical, tactical, and jump qualification. The washout rate is 80%. If you can't keep up, you're out. No special treatment. No second chances. "I understand," Raina said. "Then you can try," Vega said. "But understand something. I'm not rooting for you. I still don't think women belong in this unit. You'll have to prove me wrong. And I don't think you can." The selection course began on a Monday at 0500. 24 candidates. 23 men. 1 woman. Raina. The men looked at her with everything from curiosity to hostility. Some had heard about her. The captain who'd done 200 civilian jumps to get here. Others just saw a woman in their course and assumed she'd wash out by week 2. The instructors, all male, all veterans of the unit, made no secret of their skepticism. They'd been told to evaluate her fairly. But fair didn't mean friendly. It meant she'd get the same brutal standards as everyone else. Maybe harder, because some of them wanted to prove Vega right. That women couldn't hack it. Week 1 was physical conditioning. Runs with increasing distance and weight. Obstacle courses. Water confidence. Strength assessments. Raina had trained for this. Had spent the year between jumps working on her physical conditioning. But she was still smaller than the men. Lighter. Less upper body strength. The ruck marches were brutal. Carrying 80 pounds at a sustained pace. Her hips and shoulders screamed. But she kept pace. The obstacle courses required different techniques. Where the men could muscle over walls, she had to use momentum and leverage. But she cleared them. The water tests were exhausting. But she passed. By the end of week 1, 2 candidates had dropped. Both men. Injuries. Raina was still there. Week 2 was tactical training. Land navigation. Weapons qualification. Communication protocols. This was Raina's strength. Intelligence background. She excelled at map reading. At radio procedure. At understanding tactical situations. The instructors couldn't fault her here. But they found other ways to test her. Made her carry extra equipment. Gave her less sleep. Paired her with the least cooperative teammates. She handled it. Stayed professional. Didn't complain. By week 3, 5 more candidates had washed out. Raina remained. The men were starting to notice. This woman who wasn't supposed to be here was outperforming some of them. It created resentment in some. Respect in others. And in a few, something like camaraderie. Week 4 began jump training. This was where Vega expected her to fail. Where biology would assert itself. The unit's jump training wasn't recreational skydiving. It was combat insertion. Full combat load. 60 pounds of equipment. Weapons. Night jumps. Water jumps. Halo from 25,000 feet. HAHO, high altitude high opening, where you deployed immediately and flew the canopy for miles to reach the target zone. It was exhausting. Dangerous. And theoretically beyond what a woman's body could handle. But Raina had 200 jumps in her logbook. She knew how to handle equipment in freefall. Knew how to navigate under canopy. Knew how to manage fear and oxygen in cold. The first combat jump, she landed in the designated zone before half the men. Vega watched from the ground. His expression unreadable. By week 8, only 8 candidates remained. Raina and 7 men. The training intensified. Full mission simulations. Jump into hostile territory. Navigate to objective. Execute tactical scenario. Extract under fire. It tested everything. Physical endurance. Technical skill. Mental resilience. Team coordination. Raina was operating on 3 hours of sleep per night. Her body was a collection of bruises and sore muscles. But she was still here. Still performing. Still proving that women can't was a lie. The male candidates who'd resented her were gone. Washed out. The ones who remained had seen her capability. Had worked with her. Had watched her refuse to quit. Respect had been earned. Week 12. Final evaluation. A full mission simulation. The 8 remaining candidates were divided into 2 teams. 4 per team. Mission: Halo insertion at night into simulated hostile territory. Navigate 15 miles to target. Secure intelligence. Extract via helicopter. All while instructors played enemy forces with simulated ammunition and blank fire. It was as close to real combat as training could be. Raina's team jumped at 0-200 from 25,000 feet. The darkness was absolute. The cold at altitude was brutal. She followed her altimeter. Deployed at 4,000 feet. Navigated to the rally point. Her team assembled. They moved through the darkness using night vision. Reached the target building. Then everything went wrong. Simulated enemy contact. Blank fire erupting from multiple positions. The instructors had set up an ambush. Her team took cover. Their team leader, a lieutenant named Marcus Chen, was hit with a paint round. Simulated casualty. Raina dragged him to cover. The other 2 team members were pinned down. The simulation rules said a paint hit meant you were wounded. Had to be carried. Chen was 6'2" and weighed 200 pounds. Raina was 5'7" and weighed 140. The math didn't work. But she'd trained for this. Used leverage. Got Chen into a fireman's carry. Started moving toward the extraction point. Under simulated fire. With 60 pounds of equipment plus a 200-pound casualty. Her legs screamed. Her back threatened to give out. But she kept moving. The other team members provided covering fire. Raina covered 200 meters with Chen on her shoulders. Reached the extraction point. The helicopter, a real one, part of the exercise, was landing. She loaded Chen. Collapsed. Gasping. The exercise ended. Instructors approached. One of them, a grizzled sergeant named Kowalski, looked at her. "How much do you weigh, Captain?" 140, she gasped. "And you just carried 200 pounds of dead weight 200 meters under fire." "Yes, Sergeant." Kowalski nodded. "That was the test. The real test. We wanted to see if you'd leave him. If you'd call for help. If you'd quit. You didn't." He extended his hand. Helped her up. "You passed." The graduation ceremony was small. 8 candidates had finished. Raina and 7 men. Commander Vega stood at the front. When he called Raina's name, he paused. Looked at her. "Captain Castellanos. 1 year ago, I told you women couldn't jump. Told you the biology didn't work. Told you this unit wasn't for you. I was wrong. Not about the standards. The standards are still the highest in the military. But I was wrong about who could meet them. You've earned your place here. And I owe you an apology." He pinned the parachute wings on her uniform. The first woman to wear them in this unit. The room applauded. Genuine applause from men who'd seen her earn it. But the real test came 6 months later. Raina's first operational deployment. Her team was inserted into a hostile region to extract a downed pilot. Halo jump at night into mountainous terrain. Navigate to the pilot's location. Secure him. Extract before enemy forces arrived. The jump went smoothly. The navigation was textbook. They found the pilot. Injured but alive. Then enemy forces appeared. Faster than expected. Heavier than intelligence had suggested. The team was outnumbered. Outgunned. The extraction helicopter couldn't land under fire. They needed to move to an alternate LZ. 3 miles away. Through enemy territory. With a wounded pilot who couldn't walk. The team leader made the call. They'd move in pairs. Leapfrogging positions. Covering each other. But someone had to carry the pilot. He was a big guy. Former college linebacker. Over 200 pounds. The team leader looked at the options. Then at Raina. "Can you do it?" he asked. She looked at the pilot. At the distance. At the enemy forces closing in. "Yeah," she said. "I can do it." She got the pilot into a carry. Started moving. Her team covered her. They moved through the darkness. Enemy fire erupting around them. Raina's legs burned. Her back screamed. But she kept moving. One step. Then another. The alternate LZ was uphill. Through rough terrain. She fell twice. Got back up. Kept going. Her team fought off pursuers. Used everything they had. Finally, the LZ. The helicopter coming in hot. Enemy fire impacting around them. Raina loaded the pilot. The team boarded. The helicopter lifted off. They'd made it. Back at base, the team leader filed his after-action report. Highlighted Raina's performance. How she'd carried a casualty 3 miles under fire. How her determination had saved the pilot's life. The report went up the chain. Came back down with a commendation. But more importantly, with respect. The other teams in the unit heard the story. Saw what she'd done. The skepticism that had lingered disappeared. She wasn't the woman who'd forced her way into the unit. She was the operator who'd proven herself under fire. Who'd done the job when it mattered. Who'd earned her place not with words but with actions. Years later, when the unit finally opened officially to female candidates, Raina was asked to speak to the first class of women going through selection. She stood in front of them. Saw herself 4 years ago. Terrified. Determined. Uncertain. "They're going to tell you that you can't," she said. "That the biology doesn't work. That the standards are too high. That this isn't for you. And maybe they're right for some of you. The standards are brutal. The training will break you if you let it. But if you want it badly enough, you'll find a way. I jumped out of airplanes 200 times on my own dime to prove I could. I carried a 200-pound pilot 3 miles under enemy fire to prove I belonged. You'll have your own tests. Your own moments where quitting is easier than continuing. And nobody can tell you if you'll make it. You have to find out for yourself. But I can tell you this, don't let anyone else's certainty about your limitations become your own. Prove it to yourself first. Then prove it to them." So what's the moral here? Maybe it's this. Sometimes the only way to prove you can do something is to do it when nobody's watching. When nobody's helping. When success or failure is entirely on you. Raina could have accepted Vega's rejection. Could have stayed in her intelligence role. Could have let "women can't jump" be the final word. But she chose differently. She chose to prove it to herself first. And that self-proof became undeniable proof to everyone else. 200 jumps became the foundation for a career that opened doors for others. And the man who said women couldn't do it ended up apologizing. Not because she demanded it. But because she made it impossible for him to deny the evidence.